What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, CBS Sports. That's right, Brady Quinn, sit up. BQ and Dudes in the studio. Will Brinson here.
Yeah.
Brady Quinn, Leger Douzable. Pick Six Podcast graphics in the background. CBS Sports really pumping the cash into this podcast.
So professional.
Very professional. I'm glad that you guys are cranking up the professional nature of this. They are in South Florida. I am in a place that's somehow hotter in South Florida, and that's my house. Where there's I thought
you were in hell for a second, Will. I wasn't sure. Sorry.
Well, I've been there for a few years, Brady, but 42 to be exact. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I love my life. I'm going to talk about football for a living. If you're watching the video, like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. If you're listening to the audio version, rate and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. For those that missed the last episode, we discussed NFC East and NFC West win totals. Today, we're going to look at the NFC North and NFC South win totals. Talk about some over-unders. Before we dive into those, though, I don't know if you guys listen to podcasts. I don't.
Yes. I mean, which
dramatic pause
ones?
right there, huh?
Which ones, Will?
I was hoping Brady would be like, hell no, I hate podcast, forgetting that he was on this podcast. But there's a very popular Hang Up and Listen podcast on slate.com. And they had a gymnastics insider on earlier this week. And let's hear what they had to say.
There was one of the national team coaches' husbands said something on an unrelated sports podcast once, but it was all just scuttlebutt. Like there was nothing confirmed. It easily.
Just so you know, Brady Quinn, you make the world talk about us. Hashtag Brady in trouble.
No, why do you keep bringing this up? We already went over this.
We talked about this last time, right?
Yeah, you keep bringing this up.
Are you the audio to back it up this time?
Well, I mean, you keep you feel the need to keep bringing this up? Look, I told you, we saw some stuff on Instagram. We thought it was just public knowledge. I just wasn't sure what's happening there.
I was going to drag the gymnastics insider, who presumably is a big capital J journalist, for not providing proper credit, I guess, to the Pick Six podcast and USA Gymnastics insider Brady Quinn.
By the way, completely butchered that, considering we were specifically talking about Simone Biles racing Christian Watson, okay?
Yeah.
Which I did say would be a close race, even though Watson's blazing fast because Simone Biles is an incredible athlete.
Correct.
So that was how it actually came up in the topic of conversation.
That's right. You know what happens when you get the bloggers and the aggregators and they listen to a podcast and all of a sudden they take things out of context because they don't have any journalistic background. And next thing you know,
can we be real about something for a second? All right.
Sure.
A lot of people follow the NFL in this country. All right. I don't know that it hurt, gymnastics for being brought up and thrown in there with football. I think it might have helped, just make some conversation at that point. So.
I don't think anything bad for America or Simone Biles or this podcast or gymnastics came out of that discussion. If anything, I think it was hashtag Brady loves America. Hashtag Brady helps gymnastics. Not hashtag Brady in trouble.
This is also, we're doing this the day after we just had our veterans event up in Columbus, Ohio, our fundraising event. So good times all the way around. Tommy Tran came out.
I saw that.
Michael Kaiser came out.
Nice.
We need to get more of a CBS contingent to come up there.
I didn't get an invite.
I didn't get an invite either.
There's usually one group we save. There's a lot of people who try to get in on it.
There's a golf event
for it. Yeah.
I could have been in Ohio playing golf with you instead of sweating my face off in this hot box that is Raleigh.
Yeah.
Things that make you say,
Yeah.
Things that make you say, wow, thought we were friends. That is things that make you say,
Next year, we'll get CBS some more groups in it.
Tell you what, we got another hashtag Brady in trouble situation brewing here on the. I'm just kidding. All right,
I'm always in trouble. I'm always in trouble here.
Oh my God.
You enjoy it. Any really quick? Actually, you know what? I don't really care for quick. We'll breeze through these totals. Anything that stood out to you guys? Just one thing or two things that stood out to you, dudes, from week one of the preseason. I will. By the way, your boy Bryce Huff absolutely smoked Ike Ekwonu on a low move there.
Everybody, man. I mean, the Jets D line is ridiculous. I mean, I think everybody kind of knew that. They added depth when they got Will McDonald in the first round. I think the biggest thing, Will and Brady, was offensive line. I mean, There aren't guys just out there that you can just grab off the street. And it seems like teams are reeling when it comes to the offensive line position, more specifically offensive tackle, right? There's a lot of question marks, whether it's the New York Jets, whether it's the Carolina Panthers, whether it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a lot of O-line questions heading into the season. And Brady, you can speak from knowledge and knowing that the quarterback position, if you're not upright, it's hard for you to actually have a good season. So I think that's the biggest question mark going into preseason week 2. Do these offensive lines start to come together and take that next step? Because what we saw in preseason week 1, I mean, the Bears got 8 sacks.
Yeah.
Like they were, I believe, last place last year in creating sacks from the defensive line. So for them to get 8 sacks, kind of lets you know where the offensive line is and the state of the offensive line in the NFL.
Yeah, so let's talk about this, right? Because there's a few things that play, I think, during the course of preseason that you have to acknowledge, all right? And we've talked about in the past, one of the things that's hurting offensive line play is the lack of contact.
Correct.
And this is starting not only just at the professional level, the college level, the high school level. I was just back talking with my cousin about it. And he was like, how are you guys going to be this year? He's like, I don't know. And he's going to a different high school in my district than the one that I went to. And he's like, man, we don't hit as much as the other high school. I said, really? He's like, yeah. He's like, it's kind of on the coach to determine how much they want to hit, how much they want to teach those fundamentals. And to me, I'm like, this is football. And especially at a high school age, it's such a developmental sport that if you're not tackling to the ground, if you're not fully padded, and you know better than anyone else,
for sure.
As a D lineman, I'm sure you played O-line probably in high school, right?
A little bit in high school.
Yeah, and like you have to practice that technique fully padded, do you not?
And that's the thing also, right? As a football player, period, whether it's O-line, D-line, quarterback, defensive back, there's a callus you have to build up and build and get ready for the season, for a 17-week game season. I think, to your point, a lot of that with the new rules and how many times you can hit and how many practices you're allotted and how often you're allowed to be on the field. I think that's why we've seen a drop as far as the technique part of offensive line and defensive line.
And that's more what I'm pointing to. From the developmental technique standpoint, you can't really teach technique if you're not really doing what you're asked to do in a game, right? It's a little different for a quarterback, for a wide receiver. Now, I'm not letting the quarterbacks off the hook. These guys are in new offenses. You got younger quarterbacks, sometimes new systems. There's a lot of things that be going on with them too, right? Are they getting through their reads and progressions the way they should? Are they holding on to the football, trying to make something more than they should? You're seeing a little bit of that. But I think at the NFL level, it's a byproduct of lack of development from high school to college to the NFL. That's part of it. You're not seeing as much, ability to practice it. And let's not forget too, I've said this to Pete Prisco just a minute ago. This time of year is when you're really testing guys in different spots because on your active roster on the game day, some teams only keep 7. You get some teams that'll keep 8, 9, but you only have so many guys, 46 guys who actually dress. So it's a numbers game. And you got to be able to have guys that can play guard, can play tackle. You got to have guys that might play tackle, that might play center. Those are entirely different worlds you're living in. So it may look ugly, and it's really born out of the fact that you have backups playing, or they're trying to get some reps to. They're trying to put them in different spots. They're trying to get these groups to mesh together. It's really hard to do. I think things iron themselves out once we get to the regular season.
Yeah, that's why I think this week is monumental for those O-lines to build that continuity, to build that togetherness. You've heard coaches say, even Robert Saleh, he was like, after the Panthers week, going into this cross-practice with the Bucs, I kind of want to know who my starting 5 are. And I think Aaron Rodgers has kind of made that point too. Like, I want that continuity up front. I need to know who my 5 guys are so we can start to build this thing the right way. Because we know our defense is going to be there. It's going to be on us.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about defense ahead of the offense. I mean, most of the time, especially these pass plays, you have, you're dropping back into, I know you're on the offense, but you're dropping back into a defensive stance a lot of times, even if you're attacking as an offensive lineman. Like you have pass rushers coming at you, and you could just see like the Jets pulled a stunt on Bryce Young's first drop back, and the Panthers weren't ready for it. And that's also part of the preseason thing too, where it's like you have no freaking clue if the other team's going to be aggressive and blitz, if they're going to, try and run a bunch of stunts and twists, or if they're just going to, rush up the field and sort of try to get out of there without getting guys hurt. You mentioned the Bears, so let's dive right in. Otherwise, I'll get yelled at for a lack of doing the podcast as scheduled. The Bears win total 2.5 in the division. Over is -140. Dues. The Bears win total overall 7.5 -130. We saw Justin Fields look fantastic. He did complete 2 passes for roughly like 0.5 air yards. It turned into touchdowns. Still, I did think he, he looked good on the dump off to Khalil Herbert. But I just wonder, are the Bears getting a little too much hype here?
But so that's the thing, right? I'm not in love with either one of these overs. Like the 2.5, the Bears are going to be significantly better, right? But are you telling me that they're going to split with everybody in the division? I can see them losing 4 out of the 6 games and then 7.5 wins. Let's not forget, this team picked number 1 overall. Like they traded out of that spot. So 7.5 wins is a big jump from where they were last year. To Will's point, if Justin Fields can throw screen passes that go for 60 to the house, then I love this number, right? If their defense can get 8 sacks because they were god-awful in creating sacks last year, then I love this number. I honestly would buy it down, but if you're looking at the 2 win totals, I'm more comfortable going over 7.5 wins for the Chicago Bears just because they have got significantly better on the offensive line. Justin Fields was hit entirely too much. They got the best right tackle in the draft to protect, and he looked like a man amongst boys in that preseason game. I love what they did. They finally got him a true number 1 receiver in DJ Moore. We saw his ability in the open field on that screenplay. So I would lean towards the over 7.5 wins, but I would actually buy it down to 6.5.
It's not a bad bet. I mean, look, the reality is the Bears were a 3-win team a year ago, as you talked about. They have made some improvements. You bring in Rasheem Green, you bring in Yannick Ngakoue. They have a young secondary, too. They've got a draft pick there. They added some groups there, some guys there in the back end that should help improve that group. I look at it and say this. They could have dramatic improvement, which going from a 3-win team to a 7-win team is dramatic improvement. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to hit the over.
Correct.
So I'm more feeling the under here as far as the total over under. As you touched on, I think they're going to be improved. They're going to be a better football team. The addition of DJ Moore helps to go along with Darnell Mooney. And I think Fields is starting to get better and better along with the offensive line improvement. To me, it's too many questions within how this team's going to stack up within the division.
Correct.
And so the division bets, I kind of stayed away from when we've done these picks. I feel a little more confident about saying the under of the season total, but it could be right there at 7 because I do think this will be another competitive division.
Yeah. So one of the things about this division, it's up in the air. I think, and we'll talk about the Packers in a second, but like I'm a little more bullish on the Packers than I probably was before week 1 of the preseason, just watching Jordan Love. The Vikings win total is 8.5. It's very suspicious. And the Lions are the prohibitive favorite. Like the other thing too with the Bears, their schedule, they open up against Green Bay at home. Green Bay can win that game. I mean, it's going to be a really close game. It's going to come down to probably a field goal. At Tampa, at Kansas City, Denver at home, at Washington. Could the Bears start 3-2? Sure.
Yeah.
Bears could also start 0-5.
Correct.
3 separate times they go back-to-back weeks on the road and a late bye, which never really makes things easy for your team. You'd like to see in the middle of that schedule. So it's not an easy schedule the way it's planned out.
Exactly. And they get Arizona in week 16, which I don't know if Kyler's coming. We don't know what Kyler's going to do, but that game could end up being completely different if Kyler comes back and he's playing in it. I think the schedule, I think the whole thing about the Bears had the first overall pick, and people forget it because they picked 9th overall. And this team could win 7 games. It's a great year. Justin Fields also can't run as much as he did. When he started running a ton last year, he got hurt and he had to miss time. And that's not implausible that could happen again this year. I'll take the Bears under all day. And Bears fans can hate me for it. Don't care. They can win 7 games. It's a good year. The Detroit Lions, Brady, America's team. America's new team. The Browns were America's team for like a minute. So they traded for Watson. Now it's the Lions.
I thought you were going to say when I was there. No,
they were the world. They were the world's team when you were there. They were.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The Lions.
Let me tell you what the over under is real quick, and then you can talk.
Okay, there you go.
I'll be fast. I promise. The division win total is over 3.5 minus 140, and the Lions total win total for the season 9.5. Over is minus 125. Everybody on the Lions bandwagon.
A lot of people on the Lions bandwagon, but I'm kind of cautiously optimistic, right? This was a 3-win team 2 years ago, 9 wins last year. Are they closer to a 10, 11-win team or a team that's hovering somewhere between 7, 8, 9 wins? It's tough to tell, but you have to love what you've seen from their offense. Right. I thought the job Ben Johnson did last year, his chemistry working with Jared Goff and how they kind of sprinkle in creativity, some gutsiness, everything else. Like he's going to be one of those hot head coaching candidates that you see after this year, especially if they hit the over of this win total, which is where I'm leaning towards. If I had to lay a bet here, as we talked about the division, it's too tough to know. And here's one of the other things I'd say about laying the division bet total. You probably could find a bet or something after the beginning of the season because it's backloaded for the divisional games. Correct. They play 5 of their 6 divisional games after week 10. So you're really not going to know what type of team you got, at least in divisional play, until we get through the meat of the schedule. And at that point, I think it's probably safe to say you have a little better chance, depending on how the season goes, of hitting that over-under win total, whichever side you're on at that point. So I'm looking at more of the over of 9.5 wins. Again, their schedule we talked about a moment ago. The Bears 3 times. They have back-to-back weeks on the road. You got the same thing here, and you got opening up with Kansas City. So to me, it's like, how does that first game go? If you're competitive, maybe you say, defending world champs, we are that good. We're right in this thing. You get blown out opening week. It's like, you tell me, how's the locker room going to respond to that?
Well, this is the thing, right? I'm with you. I'm leaning towards the over 9.5. If you look at this team, they started off god awful last year, right? They went on a streak down the stretch, and it ended with them winning a game at Lambeau on the road. So this team has proven that with their backs against the wall, they can put it together. Even when a game doesn't matter, they can go out there and they're going to fight for Dan Campbell. And to me, even though they've revamped this defense, which was the Achilles heels on this team, I think the biggest acquisition, you talked about it, Brady, was Ben Johnson staying. He was a hot head coaching candidate, and he decided to come back instead of go pursue a head coaching job. So another year with Jared Goff, another year with this explosive offense. Jahmyr Gibbs, I've heard, has been uncoverable in training camp, but I like what they've done on the defensive end. Really revamped that secondary. They had a scare earlier in the year with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Looks like he will be all right. But I believe Jack Campbell and Brian Branch will have roles on this team. Aiden Hutchinson was unblockable on that cross practice versus the Giants, I heard. He's going to take another step this year. Hudson, the kid that they took late in the draft, I believe he had 8 sacks as a just specialist, as a pass rusher. He's going to take another step. So I like the over 9.5 just because I feel like this team knows how to win. I like how Dan Campbell's really assembled this team. The coaching staff is mostly ex-players. So, players really galvanize and get behind guys that play the game. They respect them. I like the Lions to go over 9.5 this year.
Are we drinking the Kool-Aid too much, Will? I mean, because I feel like
that's a good question.
The one thing that I think, and I don't know if you'd agree with this or not, that I feel as a former player is it's just a tough football team. They're tough-minded. Yep. They've got grit. Like they've got fight, and they embody their head coach. I guess the ultimate compliment you can give Dan Campbell, but it's just so seldom seen at the NFL level nowadays where you kind of see a throwback team like this. Even the way they drafted, like when you jump out Jack Campbell, Campbell's like old school. Yeah,
I love him.
A running back that you're taking in the first round. Like, are we drinking the Kool-Aid here too much?
No, I mean, that's where I've been at is like, all right, I'm not buying in on the Lions. I'm not buying all in on the Jaguars. Like, this is ridiculous that these two teams who've lost as much as they have for as long as they have are favored to win their divisions. And then I started I was really, really conservative and did the Lions win total and still came out with 10. I think the biggest issue with the 9.5 is, let's say you get blown out in Kansas City. One, how do you respond the next 2 weeks? Because you got 2 home games against Seattle and Atlanta. And if you get blown out and you don't bounce back at all, and you start out 1-2 or 0-3, then you're going to have a really hard time getting over that 9.5. We talk about being built in the Dan Campbell manner, though. This offensive line, and we talk about how bad offensive lines are, this offensive line is going to be good out of the gate. Like they have consistency. They have talent across the board. I think the lowest drafted, everybody's a 3rd round or better player who's been picked. They've been a top tier unit before. They have consistency at the play calling position, at the play caller. They bring in David Montgomery and pair him with Jahmyr Gibbs, which is basically DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams, but a version apparently that Dan Campbell likes better. And we can rip the Lions for being too like using a 1st round pick on an inside linebacker and a 1st round pick on a running back, but it's going to help this year. It might not be the smart analytical move to do in the 1st round of the draft, but it's going to help immediately. And I think saw somewhere where Chauncey Gardner-Johnson might even just move to safety because Brian Branch is playing so well and being so physical that they might even because they're going to have to use him at cornerback, and he might just move to safety because Branch is playing so well out of the gates. I can't talk about the Lions and not mention Aleem McNeil. There's a sneaky underrated player from NC State. Yeah, that's right.
You got to throw that back in there.
When you talk to the coaching staff too, they will rave about him just being the anchor of that defense. Like he kind of really does control a lot of things up front, stopping the run and all that. So I'm glad you brought up his name because he's really flown under the radar.
He's a guy who does a lot of the dirty stuff and might not always get the credit for it. And it's sort of the same way in college. So I'm on the over here. I think this team is. It really is like how do they bounce back if they get blown out by the Chiefs? That's probably my biggest concern. Not as many questions as, say, the Green Bay Packers, who have a win total of 2.5 in the division. Over is minus 200, which is kind of ridiculous. And a full season win total of 7.5. The overs minus 140. I mean, it's kind of comes down to like, what do you think Jordan Love will be? And I think I think he could be anything this year, right?
Well, and that's the thing. Why is that Vegas not have any love for Jordan Love, Brady? I mean, what we've seen, if you go back and just look at his maturation, right? When he was called into action versus the Kansas City Chiefs 2 years ago when COVID happened, it was like a deer in the headlights. You could tell he couldn't go through his reads, didn't know where to go with the football, didn't actually think he was going to start, ends up starting. A lot different last year in that Philadelphia game. Looked cool, calm, and collective. Play action pass, back foot hits. He finds Christian Watson on the drag route, hits him in stride, 60 yards, touchdown. We talked about Christian Watson's speed off of camera, but we saw how fast Christian Watson is. I like the rapport that he has with Romeo Doubs and also Christian Watson. We saw it in week 1 of the preseason game. He just knows how to find the ball. Great touch pass to Romeo Doubs in the back of the end zone on a corner route. Puts it only where Romeo Doubs can get it. You know this as a quarterback. In the red zone, that ball's got to be helmeted higher, right, so you don't worry about, tips and overthrows and interceptions. So I love Jordan Love. I think the beginning of the season, this team is going to be led by their run game. They have a nice two-headed monster in the backfield. And that defense, let's not forget, Rashawn Gary is coming back. Mm-hmm. And the player he was before he had the injury last year, right? You still got Preston Smith on the outside. Jair Alexander is one of the best corners in football. They got dudes, they have guys on defense. I believe this defense takes another step. I think they crush this over. I think they get at least 9 wins. I'm taking the Packers over 7.5 wins.
It's tough for me because there's just so much unknown about, you can look at preseason and take what you want from it. There's no correlation to the regular season. Right. We know that, right? And sometimes
the Chiefs lost to the Bears in week 1 of the preseason last year. And the Bears are the worst record of the Chiefs for the Super Bowl. So yeah, you're right.
And by the way, look at Andy Reid's preseason record. All right. If you compare Andy Reid's preseason record to, some of the others out there, like John Harbaugh, for example, they've won now 24 straight. Yeah. Okay. Maybe there's a little more something to that as far as how they're approaching preseason. Sure. Trust me, the Chiefs are not trying to be the world champions in the preseason. And so there's just a lot up in the air to me as far as how this is all going to look for 2 reasons. The obvious is Jordan Love. The other thing is play calling. I think a lot of people are underestimating the impact of Aaron Rodgers, not only in his preparation, but in game too, making adjustments, making audibles, changes on the field, where Jordan Love had the same ability to do so. When you go back and look at Matt LaFleur offenses coached back when he was with the Tennessee Titans, it wasn't like they were, lighting the world on fire. So curious to see what that's going to look like. Does anyone recall too what Aaron Rodgers' first season looked like after he took over for Brett Favre?
6-10.
Yeah, 6-10. I mean,
so, and it wasn't like that roster was bare of talent or anything else. I just think sometimes there's growing pains and there's a transitional period as Jordan Love's trying to find out who he is as that quarterback, as the team's trying to find out what kind of offense, what their identity is as well. And so I think there's some elements there. And then the last thing I'll say that's kind of concerning is, if you look at what the Chicago Bears like to do, like to run the football, okay? If you look at what the Detroit Lions, I think, wanted, they like to run the football too. And if you look at the one thing that's been the Achilles heel of that defense in Green Bay, you can't stop the run. That's 2 divisional opponents right there that are going to be able to run the football effectively. You think Minnesota probably will too with Kevin O'Connell, the outside zone running scheme. You'll get some of that even with Alexander Madison in the backfield there. So I just think there's some concerns offensively. There's some concerns defensively. I'm leading more of the season total of the under here. Ooh. And that doesn't mean it's an indictment on anything early on. Aaron Rodgers became one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play after the 6-10 season. Jordan Love very well could do that as well. But I think right now you've got to kind of see something out of them, with this schedule that they've got to, for me at least, to feel more confident in where this team's at.
Yeah, I actually picked as my bet for this the Packers to win the division because it's down to plus 380. You'd like to get 4-1 or better. I just think, and to that point, it really like that 6-10 point. I was on the radio with like Danny Cannell and Danny and Dusty on Meadow Radio like earlier today, and I made the exact same point. It's like if the Packers go 7-10 and Jordan Love proves to them and to like everybody that he's the guy, that's a great season.
Like nothing else matters.
Correct. Exactly. If Jordan Love looks competent and he looks like he shows that he has an upside and he looks comfortable out there, and it's sort of like that eye test sort of thing. It was that way with Rodgers. You saw it was like Rodgers is the guy. They're just not winning games. Like they're going to win games eventually. And I thought we saw it. He had that the deep ball down the field that got broken up. Who's the young Bengal safety that broke it up? Anyway, it was a great play on the ball defensively. Yeah, Hill. Yeah, Dax Hill. Yeah, sorry. But it was a great play defensively. I thought it was a good throw. He had, he had the touch pass to Dobbs that you mentioned, Deuce, where it's like, oh, wow, I'm surprised he didn't kind of overcook that. But then he also had this mid-tier, crosser route that he absolutely flew, just skied somebody.
Musgrave.
Yeah, to Musgrave. So it's like, what are we going to get particularly early in the season? They get at Chicago, at Atlanta, Saints, Lions at home, at the Raiders. Those are 5 defenses that probably aren't going to be elite. Maybe the Saints you can give credit to, but if they don't win 2 or 3 of those games, I think it's going to be really hard to get this over. So early in the season, Jordan Love is going to be a big factor for this total. The Minnesota Vikings won 13 games last year, and their win total is only 8.5. Why is that? We'll tell you next, coming up after the break.
Driving into the stadium, seeing everybody tailgating, I get that ready to go feeling.
To walk through the fan section over there and see that many people excited about football, so I'm really looking forward to it.
You get away from football for a little bit and then you start missing and you get that itch again.
For me, that first catch is everything. Once I get one catch, I'm in the zone.
Getting back to football.
We can't wait.
Can't wait.
We can't wait.
We can't wait.
If Brady Quinn was playing in the NFL in 2023, it's not hard to imagine him being filmed throwing the ice on after a game on the team plane, loading up with the jewelry, doing some kind of doing a very cool dance, maybe being filmed. Your lovely wife is planning out your flannel shirts that you'd be wearing to the games. Vikings win total with Kirk Cousins, 8.5. It's insanely low considering they won 13 games last year. 11-0 in the regular season in one-score games, an NFL record. The only time it's ever happened. Over -125 in their division total, 3.5. The under -160. Where you want to go with the Vikings, Brady?
I'm a believer in this team not being able to replicate being a 13-win team, but my goodness, being able to hit the over of 8.5. It's was there some dramatic change where this team got worse just because they don't have Dalvin Cook anymore?
Lost a lot of talent, though, Brady.
What? Dalvin Cook? They got Danielle Hunter coming back. They got Danielle Hunter coming back. By the way,
Darius Smith, Alvin Tomlinson.
Their defense was atrocious last year.
Yes, for sure.
It was atrocious. So, you can lose some of those guys unless you want them to come back and play the same way. All right? My point is this. You get Dino Hunter. You get Byron Murphy coming in. They draft Mekhi Blackman. So they shore up some of the pieces in the secondary. Right. You get a new defensive coordinator in Brian Flores, who I think is much better suited for the personnel that they've got and the scheme that he's going to run. And they were dead last in pass defense. Yeah. So all you have to do is just make a decent jump. And I think you're going to improve, and you're not playing in a lot of those one-score games because the comment's going to be, well, there's no way they're going to be able to finish and win as many one-game, end-of-game scenarios like they did last year. And I agree, they will not. But they're also not going to be in 11 of the same situations like they were last year.
Exactly.
So this is one where I still think the Minnesota Vikings are the top team in this division. Ooh. They were the most competitive while Aaron Rodgers was with the Green Bay Packers, while the Packers have really dominated this division. Yep. And I think they're now the team that in a make-or-break year for Kirk Cousins, at least contractually speaking, he seems to step up. So you like that, Will? You like that? Because I think the Minnesota Vikings hit this over, and I don't think – I'm not saying it's not going to be close, but I think they can be a 10-win team. I don't think that's that far of a stretch with what they've got coming back, and Flores now taking over the defense.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm with the over on this team. Last time I checked, Justin Jefferson didn't go anywhere. Kirk Cousins,
and you get Jordan Addison to go next to him.
And then you added Jordan Addison. And we saw, to me, he was probably the best route-running receiver coming out of this draft. Yeah. And we saw some of his fancy footwork in the preseason game, catching something on the side. So to your point, though, right, Brian Flores, he's always been tasked to do more with less, right? Mm-hmm. He talked about some of the issues they had on defense. That pass secondary was just god-awful. Yeah. They bring Harrison Smith back. They bring in Byron Murphy, who I really like. I don't know if they have the players on defense to make a true jump. Like you said, if they're just a little bit better, though, they could crush this over, right? I am a little nervous about their pass rush. Danielle Hunter is coming back, but besides him, who scares you up front, right? They lost Alvin Tomlinson to Darius Smith. So I think they have, as far as talent-wise, they don't have as many players. Again, the defense was bad last year, but when you lose a guy like Eric Kendricks, who's been a mainstay on that team, you lose a guy like Zadarius Smith, who brought that energy, who brought that attitude to the team. Dalvin Thompson is
still
the guy.
32nd in pass defense. I'm just saying, like,
yes, I mean, you can pass rush all you want. If somebody's open in 2 seconds, there's nothing you can do about it. So they didn't really fit. I mean, bringing in Byron Murphy helps, but who's on the other side at corner? Is Andrew Booth going to be the starter?
Well, again, I think one of the things you can scheme up some things to get the ball out quick.
Yeah,
everyone loves that.
Brian Flores will do that.
Everyone loves to have a 4-man rush. They can get home and you play whatever you want behind that. But the reality is that you don't have that luxury all the time. So I think Flores is going to bring together a scheme that's going to be able to put them in positions where they're not going to be allowing them to dink and dunk and play in that shell coverage where they just allow them to hit 15, 20-yard chunks all the way down the field. Yeah,
but with this offense alone, they should get over 8.5 wins. I mean, I think that's a low number. Like you said, they won 13 games last year. Will they win as many close games? Probably not. But hopefully you're not, like you said, in those situations where you have a gunfight where you both got to score 30-plus points to win the game. So I like the Vikings to go over on the 8.5.
So I'm going to do this just mostly to annoy Brady. I'm going to just list the three analytical reasons why people should be down on the Vikings. One, if you look at the Pythagorean theorem and their I don't know if you the Pythagorean theorem is basically like you take their points for, points against, it gives you the expected win-loss number.
Right.
They went 13-4. Their expected win-loss wins were 8.4, which is and that's an insane difference. That usually regresses. They went 11-0 in one-score games. Those are usually 50%. 11-0 is literally an NFL record. It's never happened before. And then one more.
But again, they're not going to be presented with that same scenario.
Can I finish?
No, because when you use a stat like that we already debunked, that's where nerds get it wrong. You're not going to be in that scenario, Brady. There was a reason why it happened one time in NFL history, because you had a prolific offense matched with a defense that couldn't stop anyone in the passing game. So it always allowed for a tight game down the final 2 minutes that puts you in that situation.
The other thing too, in terms of adjusted games lost, I should have put on my glasses for this. They were
get to 7-1 at one point this season, and we replay this clip of Will doing amazing.
This. No, look, I think it's insane that the Vikings that they're not favored to win the division and that their win total is 8.5. They won 13 games last year, and they do have meaningful talent, and I think they have a good coaching staff. They're going to regress, but they could regress to 9 or 10 wins. Right, exactly.
Regress 4 games, you still hit the over.
Exactly.
Yeah. I wouldn't take the under on their win total personally. I'm sort of cheating here. I'm going to pick their under division win total 3.5, which is minus 160. Right? It's a total cop out. I just felt like throwing the nerd stats against the wall and seeing Brady react and call me a nerd. It's just such a red flag that Vegas is just out on the Vikings completely. You'd never see a team win 13 games, lose a couple of veteran guys on both sides of the ball, but nothing still have intact most of their talent and see their win total be 8.5 and them not be the favorite to win the division. A team I am in on though, probably to my own detriment. The Atlanta Falcons.
Ooh.
Division win total set at 3.5. My goodness, the over plus 120, the under minus 150 dues. And the win total also like the Vikings. Imagine taking the Vikings and the Falcons from last year and they have the same win total, 8.5, the over minus 135 for Atlanta here. Your thoughts?
I like this Atlanta Falcons team. You talked about Dan Campbell earlier with the Lions, but this Falcons team is kind of built the same way, old school mentality. We're going to punch you in the mouth, play in and play out. Do something about it. There were times where they line up in pony last year. I haven't seen that in the NFL game in forever. 3 backs in the backfield. We're running it downhill. We're going to take it out the quarterback's hands if he messes up. I think they'll do a little bit more of that this year because Desmond Ridder, we don't know what he's going to be essentially, right? So Arthur Smith believes in his run game. I like them to go over 8.5 wins. Now, their Achilles heel was just like the Vikings. Their pass defense was god-awful. But they've revamped that secondary. Got one of the best young safeties in Jesse Bates coming over there. Pairing with my guy, Richie Grant from UCF, who they took in the second round a few years ago. I like what they did at corner. A.J. Terrell's still there. He was kind of banged up last year. I think he'll have a bounce back year. Jeff Okudah did get banged up, but it looks like he's going to maybe be all right for the season. But they also went and got Mike Hughes, too. So now they have somebody just in case he doesn't come back. You look at second-year players like Arnold Ebiketie, Troy Anderson. I think they take a jump this year. I like this Atlanta Falcons team to go over 8.5 wins just because they won 7 last year. They were the one team in the division I actually trusted more than anybody, even though the Bucs ended up winning that division last year. just because if you can run the ball and eat that clock, Brady, you can be in every game. And that's the mentality of the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, I mean, look, this to me, the over-under win total for the season, I think, has a lot to do with Desmond Ridder and the growth of Desmond Ridder and what this offense turns into. I mean, as much as you'd like to be able to run the football as much as they did last year with Tyler Algier and Cordero Patterson, now you're bringing Bijan Robinson.
Correct.
I think that's the anticipation, but I think also as an organization, you'd like to see Desmond Ridder take that next step and utilize Kyle Pitts and utilize Drake London on the outside. So I've got like too many questions about what that's going to ultimately morph into or look at. I think Arthur Smith's a hell of a coach. He's got a great staff. They've coached these guys up to be probably one of the more competitive 7-win teams last year. Yeah. So they'll be in the mix for the over-under total. I don't want to touch it. I do think the division will be competitive. I think if we've seen anything so far, the Saints have a deep roster. Yep. Carr looks like he's going to fit in very well there in New Orleans. I think there's a greater likelihood that you could see the Saints potentially sweep them. Or maybe they all just kind of beat each other up. They split. So if I had to make a bet for the Falcons, which I really wouldn't, but I would bet the under at 3.5 of division wins because I think they can end up 3-3, but still, to your point, find a way of winning 6 other games to hit the over of 8.5.
Yeah, I believe last year, because they lost their first 2 division games to New Orleans and Tampa Bay, beat that Panthers in that insane P.J. Walker, DJ Moore overtime game with the Eddie Pinheiro missed extra point. Lost to the Panthers. I think they went 2-4 in the division. Like, the division is not tough, but it is also very even.
There's going to be a lot of parity out
there.
Exactly. It's like, is it not tough or is it tough? Because we don't really know. Like,
it's tough for the teams in the division because they're all basically even. But like, if you drop the Chiefs in the division, they're winning like 14 games and going 6-0 in the division more than likely, right? I mean, that's fine. I just think I like the Falcons a lot. I like their over here. I liked it a lot more when it was 7.5 and people weren't high on them and they weren't getting a bunch of buzz. Sure. And I think that if the one thing that concerns me, the defense is going to be improved, right? The offense is going to be improved. They're going to run the ball really well. I think they're kind of trying to recreate sort of what they like Tennessee light, where it's like you have enough defense and enough running the football and a quarterback who's not going to make mistakes and sort of win for you like a Tannehill style. The problem is that's a super fragile way to build a team and win games because you're basically in games where it's 16-13 every week and you need to come up on the right side of those wins or else you can end up being 7-10 again. So 8.5 is a lot. You're asking for 9-8. I mean, that's tough.
To your point on that like idea or that concept, I think the more times you put yourself in that situation, the more times you're really putting the game on Desmond Ritter's shoulders. Exactly. Right? Like, that's what you're talking about. And I think if you look at the division, I don't know that you'd pick Desmond Ridder over Derek Carr in that scenario. I don't know how you feel about Desmond Ridder versus Bryce Young at this point in time.
You're taking Bryce Young.
And so maybe you say Baker Mayfield. I don't know. Like, that's the only thing is I think there's still so much we need to learn about Desmond Ridder. And it's another reason why I'm just kind of like, I feel a little better about maybe this division just all being even with one another. And then you're seeing, potentially them hit that over or under win total based on the total season.
Not sure if you heard that gigantic clap of thunder at my house. If you did, I'm in the middle of it's not. No. You're not at my house, Brady.
Oh, it's where you are.
It's where I am. Yeah. Sorry. Like I jumped. I actually think the move I would prefer to the Falcons over would be, because you're laying juice there, you can get them at plus money to make the playoffs, or you can get them at like plus 230 to win the division. So like I'm on the Falcons over, but I think that you can't go over 3.5 division wins. I would rather go with getting some plus money on whether it's the make the playoffs or win the division, and you hope that you do kind of get that lightning in a bottle for them. You mentioned Bryce Young, buddy. His footwork was great. I can't remember who I went to last. So Brady, I'll go to you because you famously on this podcast said, when I'm down in the dumps, when I'm feeling lonely, when the world's against me, when my kids hate me, I go and watch Bryce Young film. You watch Bryce Young film.
I go watch Bryce Young film. And it makes me smile every time. So
look, he got popped a bunch by the Jets, but his footwork was great and his reads and progressions were great. Their win total in the division 3 over plus 130, and their win total 9, which this may have gotten a little out ahead of ourselves. Plus 100, under minus 130. What do you think about Carolina?
Yeah, so obviously anyone who watched that game is probably concerned for Bryce Young's well-being, given how poor the offensive line played versus the Jets, which
the backups too.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Jets can draft out of luxury because of how good their defensive front is. But right. I think the general point is this: the Panthers can't forget when they started to have success in the second half of last year that made them a 7-win team. What got them there? It was running the football. It was good defense. So, and Ike Ekwonu, who, if you looked at him as a prospect coming out. We talked about this, Will. Like, he was a great run blocker.
He is a great run blocker.
Work in progress in pass pro. Correct. And he got better, but it's going to still take some time. So there's a lot to be concerned about. Again, I don't want to read too much into a preseason game. This was a tough one for me because I don't like the number at 9. I wish it was at 8.5. I feel a lot better. Maybe you can tease it down. I guess because there's a little juice there, I'll go ahead and take – what was the plus money on the division total?
The division total was plus 100 over 9, and then the under was minus 130.
Yep.
Well, that's for
that's
total
total wins for the division.
Division total. I'm sorry. The over's
wins,
3 plus 130. That's actually a pretty good look.
Yeah. So that was actually the only reason I went with that and say, now let's take the over of division wins.
Wow. Because look, you might for a division game.
Well, you might push there.
Yeah. You could push.
You don't have the half game, so you'd like to tease it down to 2.5 if you could. But sitting there at 3, you're going, okay. Look, if you think this team's going to win the over of 9 games, you think they're going to win 10.
At least win 3 divisions.
Yeah, and you get a little extra juice at plus 130 versus plus 100. So that was more my logic behind it. But this is one where, again, like, probably want to wait and see what you get in the season at this point. Like, based on how it's looked so far.
Or 8 for sure.
Yeah.
Just give Brady a little love, because I remember we were having a discussion on HQ about Bryce Young last year, and he was like, well, depending on what the Jets' record is, you might want to consider, because Bryce Young is the best prospect I've ever seen on tape. I had the pleasure, Will and Brady, of going to Spartanburg for the cross practice for the Jets in Carolina. And Bryce Young is something I've never seen before.
He's incredible.
Literally, there was a team period where it was like 6 straight sacks by the Jets. Never flustered, never got pissed off, never said, come on, O-line. Just went about his business. 2-minute drill. First play, sacked by Quinn Williams. Second play, defensive line creates havoc again. He has to eat the ball, throw it away. Third play, you saw what you saw at Alabama. Manipulate the pocket. Just shuffle to the left a little bit. Step up in the pocket. Hit Adam Thielen for a first down on a big third down. Did it 2 more times just like that. And even in that game, right, you talked about it, Will, he was getting, like, beaten down. Solomon Thomas on the first play of the game, they run a text game, was a stunt. Come scot-free and just clear shot on Bryce Young, because people were saying on Twitter, because I'm with you, I'm with him on Offensive Rookie of the Year. I was telling people, this guy's going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Yes. They were like, not Bijan Robinson. I was like, nah, trust me, it's Bryce Young. I've never seen anything like him. They're like, well, he hasn't taken any hits. I'm like, y'all forget at Alabama, he was in the best conference in all of football. And that offensive line wasn't the greatest when he was there. He was getting beat up there, and he got up every play. And we saw that in the preseason
He got up and he popped Ike Ekwonu on the helmet, too. Like, you could tell Ike was apologizing. He's like, nah, don't sweat it.
I've never seen a rookie act like that, ever in my career. So this number is high, over 9 wins. I'm taking the under on it just because, again, I think they could split every game in the division. If the number was at 8, 7.5, I would take the over. I just think 9 wins, even though they won 7 games last year, to your point, running the football. You know, Coach Wilkes really got this team to galvanize together, play good defense in the back end. Another reason that concerns me, they got good frontline talent. Their depth is not there.
No depth.
So if somebody gets hurt, this could definitely be under. So I'm taking the under just because lack of depth, and there is some issues on O-line. The good thing for the Carolina Panthers, they're not playing the Jets every week, right? No. Nobody in that division has a defensive line like the Jets. There is concerns with the O-line and the depth, so that's why I'm taking the under on the wins. I believe they get 8 wins.
I think, like, I'm with you completely. Like, the stuff about the sacks. Let's not forget the Jets already had a preseason game under their belt. Like, they had reps going in where they were in their second preseason week. And the Panthers, I think Frank Reich was trying to be really conservative and just not, and the Jets were being aggressive. They were running those stunts. They were letting those guys cook.
Hey, there's some teams who don't care about the preseason results. They're not trying to win the offseason, the preseason.
Yeah.
I think we know in that particular game,
Who cares?
The priorities of maybe how two of those teams handle themselves.
Well, I mean, yes and no, because it just didn't play a lot of their starters.
I know. I'm just saying.
But dudes, let's not forget, because we're recording this on Tuesday afternoon. I believe this evening we'll probably be watching a little Hard Knocks and with it's like, hey, like look how good we are. Like the Jets are not trying to hide. Like I said this on Twitter a couple weeks ago when Sean Payton called out Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. It was like, Rodgers is going to be so over the top with his leadership and all that stuff on Hard Knocks, and it's like it's fine. It is. The Jets want to look good on Hard Knocks. They want to look like they're a team with momentum going into the season. I think.
Hey, you can't take flight if you don't take off. All right, and it starts in the offseason, preseason. All right, hyping some things up. All right, if you want to take the flight, you got to take off in the offseason. I
love it.
Otherwise, you just look like a dog who's like scraping his butt on the ground, and that's no good. That's the Jets most of the year. All right,
the visual.
Exactly. It's a great analogy. Speaking of, I got nothing there. You know what? We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about the Buccaneers next.
Fight for something. First play of the game to the last play of the game. 1, 2, 3.
And we got two of the hottest conferences. This is big-time college ball.
They're going to come. We're going to come.
Two big boys getting ready to play. Big, the operative word here. And here they come.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers lost Tom Brady. That did a lot to their win total. Over under in the division, 2.5. The under is -130. No one likes the Bucs this year, and they know it too. I think our former colleague Jeremy Fowler, now at ESPN, or maybe he may be a MacBook salesman. I'm not sure. I can't tell from his Twitter feed. I'm not sure if you guys saw it. He got hacked like 3 days in a row, and the hacker kept posting like, do you want to buy MacBooks? And Jeremy got it back and then posted, I'm not selling MacBooks. And then 30 minutes later, it was like
hacked again. That's
more MacBooks.
Somebody's got a personal vendetta against him.
No, I think they're just trying to steal money. I think it was I don't think it was personal. I mean, maybe somebody at the Mac store or the Apple store. Anyway, Jeremy was down there in Tampa Bay, and everyone was like, we don't understand why we're the team that everybody's picking to be last. The big chip on the shoulder for the Buccaneers here. Does it matter though, dudes? They're over under 6.5 the total for the season, -120 there, and the division total 2.5 under -130.
Yeah, I mean, me and Brady were talking about this off camera before the show, and I'm leaning towards the under here. I just believe this is a team that's literally starting all over, right? There's issues on O-line. You're taking your best offensive line, moving them from right tackle to left tackle, and Tristan Wirfs. Luke Goedeke is potentially going to be the starting right tackle. He struggled in the preseason game. They said he struggled through all of camp, right? And then you look at it, Baker Mayfield. Which Baker Mayfield are we going to get? And I think the numbers, showing the over and under are dictated towards that, right? They don't know what Baker Mayfield are we going to get the one from the Rams, or are we going to get the one from the Carolina Panthers? Yes, he looked good in the preseason game, but Brady, we talked about this. That means nothing. He kind of managed that game, didn't really throw the ball down the field. Was efficient, right? Tampa Bay hasn't had a run game in 3 years, maybe, since they won the Super Bowl with playoff Lenny. I think this is going to be a fire sale at the trade deadline. I think a lot of guys, Mike Evans has already been talked about potentially being traded. I think he could be traded. I think a couple pieces on defense could be traded. I like the under here. I think this is a full resale. They're going to have to rebuild this team.
Yeah, it's tough to say this because I'm rooting for Baker Mayfield to have success, obviously, given what he went through in Cleveland and Carolina, and then how he played in a short stint with the Rams. It's tough being in this many systems, this many teams in a short period of time. Trust me, been there, done that. It's really hard to feel ingrained in a system, to have chemistry with the guys you're throwing to, the offensive line, all parties involved. And mind you, he was going through for a period of time a quarterback competition where Kyle Trask has taken some of those reps. So for me, I look at this. I think the under of the season win total is probably accurate. You don't want to be the rebound guy sometimes when you meet someone. You don't want to be the guys after the guy who was so memorable and was there forever. A lot of times, you end up being that quarterback who comes in trying to replicate what Tom did or even, fill in for the shoes. It's a tough spot to be in. So it feels like this is a team that should have been more in rebuild mode. And they, for whatever reason, decide not to do that this offseason. They're not quite there yet. So, again, tough spot for a lot of guys who've had success. Mike Evans has had probably one of the more underrated careers that no one talks about enough. Yeah. And so for it to kind of come to where I think they're going to be this year, I don't know. But it's just they're in a tough spot right now. Baker's in a tough spot. Everyone's in a tough spot, I think, to try to replace and replicate what they were able to create with Tom Brady doing that short stint there.
I keep coming back to, and I can't remember what game it was, but it was late in the year last year, and the Bucs were somehow, because I had bet when Tom Brady announced that he was coming back, like I quickly went and hammered the Bucs to win the division at like minus 150. It ended up working out, but it was really unnecessarily dicey.
Stressful at the end of the year.
Yeah, I was like, why am I sweating this? This is so stupid. And I keep coming back. I'm not sure exactly what game it was, but it was like last 5 games of the year.
I think it was probably the Carolina Panthers game, right?
Right, well, it was where Todd Bowles punted on like 4th and 5 at midfield with Tom effing Brady under center. Yeah. And like, so what is he going to do with Baker? And like, what if this offensive line falls off a cliff with Baker? And like, Chris Godwin and Mike Evans are fantastic, but it might not matter if Baker is constantly under pressure. I have to go under here with the Bucs. I guess the only thing that like really concerns me about taking the under, and I think is like everybody's off of them. Right? Nobody thinks the Buccaneers will be any good, and we're all on the Panthers and the Saints and the Falcons. It's like, man, these teams are all pretty flawed too. Like, what if Tampa emerges as a 8-9, 9-8 division winner? I don't think it's likely, so I'm taking the under. But I hate to dog Todd Bowles. I just don't think this is it, and I think there's going to be some fighting down there in Tampa. Finally, the New Orleans Saints. Derek Carr's New Orleans Saints. Don't know if you know that. Derek Carr on the New Orleans Saints now. Carr left from the Raiders, went to the Saints. And I got to tell you, like, I've been down on the Saints this offseason, but, man, they look – I mean, again, week one drive, they looked really sharp. And Alvin Kamara is going to miss a few games, but he looked explosive in the receiving game early. Michael Thomas is back out there. They got some young talent on offense. I'm curious, Brady. Do you trust the Saints, and do you have any interest in their division win total over 3.5 minus 120, or the win total as a whole 9.5 minus 110?
Yeah, I like the over of the total, and in part because, again, I just think divisional matchups, there's a lot of times you see good teams still splitting the division.
Correct.
And this is one where if you're looking at Derek Carr of the past, 5 years, I mean, 4 of the 5 years he's gone over 4,000 yards passing. Like, I don't know that we've paid him his due of what he's capable of. And I saw you a little bit of a glimpse of what he was able to do in the preseason so far. I don't want to put a ton of weight in that, but if Michael Thomas is back and Olave is the way he's capable of, and once Kamara's back there in the backfield as well, like, you got 3 dynamic playmakers. And on top of that, a quarterback that can distribute the football and push the ball down the field, which is something we really haven't seen quite as much. And look, if he goes down, you got Jameis back there too. It's not like Jameis isn't capable of coming in and winning some games. They got a great offensive line. Their defense, in my opinion, is pretty stacked. So top to bottom, this roster is the best in the division. It would lead me to think that they would be able to hit that 4, but I'd rather take the over of the season win total, because I do think they'll be able to be competitive in the NFC throughout the course of their schedule with Derek Carr there at quarterback. So I'm bullish on the Saints. I think it looks like a layup, and it probably will be a layup if things go how I think they will.
Yeah, I'm right there with you with the Saints. I picked them to win the division. And to your point, people have not given Derek Carr the due respect. I believe Will, gave us a nugget, but I've been literally screaming this nugget for the last 7 years. When's the last time Derek Carr even had a top 10 defense? Not even top 5, top 10 defense. Never. So people, like when I was saying that the Jets should be in on him, because you know what you're going to get with Derek Carr. He's going to distribute the ball. He's not going to turn it over. Yes, Aaron Rodgers, if you can get him, great. But if not, I thought Derek Carr was a great get for the Jets, because you have a top 5 defense, which Derek Carr has never had. Now he comes with the Saints, where a division that isn't as strong as in the AFC. He has a top 5, top 10 defense that he can really lean on. Rashid Shaheed is a guy that I've been really bullish on. I think he's going to be their speed guy, the guy down the field.
Oh, he already is that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think he's going to have a big year for them. I know you mentioned Mike Thomas and Chris Olave. Do not sleep on Rashid Shaheed. He was the guy that was their gadget guy last year. He was the guy that took the top off the defense. I believe he gets an expanded role this year. They have the most complete roster in this division. I don't even think it's even close. I believe they hammer the over 9.5 and they win the division.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a noted Derek Carr hater.
Oh, you're one of those guys.
You're like Prisco with Cousins. Like they can't do anything to make you guys happy. It's unbelievable.
I said he was being good last year, and he stunk. Finally, I said he's being good, and he's terrible. The whole family's blocked me on Twitter. So, like, what do you want me to do? Like, I mean, like, I'm blocked by Derek, David, and Darren. Did you even know there was a Darren? He's the third brother. He coaches high school football. He blocked me too. David tried to report me to like our employer. Like when I said that Derek threw a screen pass on 4th down and like threw it away. He's like quote tweeted it was like at CBS. It was like, I think they're a little more worried about young Sheldon than they are about Will Brinson. Okay, so like let's maybe you tagged the wrong CBS here, pal. I don't know. Maybe young Brinson could be a show. I'd watch that.
That's funny.
Yeah. At any rate, I'm on the Saints under, but I just think like we're still not really giving the loss of Sean Payton its due. Like that roster can be good all you want. They still won 7 games last year. I know the quarterback is a massive upgrade, but I don't trust it. I don't trust it. That's all I got. I don't trust it. So I'm going.
Hey, look, there's going to be some surprises in the NFC. There's going to be. Bottom line. I mean, that's the reality of it. I just think if you were to rank right now the top quarterbacks in the NFC, could you do it?
I mean, it's
what
like
would they be?
It's Hurts, Dak. We're gonna take Kyler out of the equation, right? Because we don't know.
Yeah, he's hurt right now. Yeah.
I mean, like 3 is Jared Goff and 4 is Cousins. 5 is Derek Carr. 5 is Bryce Young. I don't know.
He's a top 5 quarterback.
That's what I'm saying. He's a top 5 in the conference.
Yeah.
And you price it as top quarterback in the division, right?
Yeah.
They're certainly the most established quarterback in the division. Yes.
Most established. So you won't even say right now definitively.
I'll take
he's
Bryce.
The best quarterback.
I was gonna say he's gonna say Bryce Young.
I'll take Bryce over Derek Carr.
Well, I'm not saying to build a team. I'm saying right now, though.
Right now.
I'm saying right now. Like, give me a season behind the same offensive line with the same staff, same weapons. I'll take Bryce over Derek Carr. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. I think that's it's. I mean,
I guess you don't love Bryce as much as you think you do.
All right. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do if they hit the over? That's what I want to know.
Lose all my Panthers.
Give Derek Carr his love.
You have to go buy a Derek Carr jersey and wear it.
That would be great.
That's fine.
Hey, by the way, you have to wear the Derek Carr jersey, and then you have to have the Brinson sucks hat on.
I'll tell you what. If the Saints go over their win total because of Derek Carr, like if they go over the win total with Jameis,
always something, right?
What's the qualifier? Like you have to start so many games.
If Jameis Winston goes like 7-2, I'm not gonna. But if they go over the win total because of Derek Carr, I'll put on a bunch of black mascara and do the show for a week. How about that?
Derek Carr gets hurt.
No black mess. No, we don't want that. All we're asking for is a Brinson sucks hat and your Derek Carr jersey.
Yeah.
Fine. I don't even have a Brinson sucks hat, but I'll try. You could get one from Eric K's office. All right.
And because you didn't piggyback last year, you're gonna make a donation to Derek Carr's foundation because I'm sure he's a charity guy. You're making a donation. You're on top of that.
Okay, just really got leverage against the Saints even more than I was before. Glad we could do the show. BQ and Dews.
Oh my goodness.
Brinson here. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review. These Tuesdays are fun. We should do it more often. You guys in the studio, I like that.
Hey,
we could do it, man. We could do it. We're here. Just tell us when, man.
It's not my job. I just show up and talk. I'm not in charge here. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. For BQ, for Dews, I'm Brinson. We will see you guys later. Subscribe, rate, and review. Hit that like button. Bye.